Hi, Dr. Lau. So thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot of stuff based on off of your research. So, I saw that in your research you did a lot of experiments with mice, and I saw that you did electrophysiological measurements with mice, which was really interesting to me. But I had a question about like the ethical concerns or challenges that like, what are some ethical concerns or challenges that you might have faced in like or like as a researcher, and like how do you plan to address or how did you like navigate or like mitigate the different ethical concerns? Thank you.
And thank you for the question. And yes, it is electrophysiology recording that we do. And indeed, it is some pretty invasive procedure. But surprisingly, mouse handle that very well. So for every experiment that we plan to do, the researcher need to be trained, and we need to pass. So in the UK, people need to pass exam in order to get certified for animal surgery. In Hong Kong, there is no restriction for it, but there are courses that we need to go through in order to participate in vivo surgery. And the monitoring of the process is quite substantial. So we check the animal after the surgery, during the surgery, and after the surgery on how they recover. And if there is any distress on the animal, we will terminate the experiment because it is not in anyone's interest to keep the unhappy animal. So the experiment result that we get comes from animal that I wouldn't say they are perfectly happy, but they act perfectly normal. And there are standard pain scale published by international community to regulate the pain tolerated by the animal.
Like would you
Yeah.
say like mice are the most like suitable animals for like the type of experiments that you do, or do you think that there are other like creatures or like living animals that could also like fit the requirements for your research?
Increasing use of in silicon model to replace actual mouse work. For your particular question, I think the choice of the model animal would depends on what you study. For example, if you are looking at nerve connection that can be found in primitive structure, primitive organisms such as zebrafish, then you may well study that rather than in mouse models. So if you are looking at social behavior that require tool use, you may need to choose animal that would use tool in their natural behavior, for example, parrot. So depending on your research question, you will go for a particular animal model that allows you to study that. But I think currently, in addition to the selection, I think nowadays most people use computation model to to kind of test their hypothesis. So that would reduce the animal use. And of course, because I primarily work on in vivo experiments, there are also slides or acute recording that you can do outside of the animal or cell culture.
I think Toming has a question too.
Hi, thanks for sharing parts of your research with us. It's very interesting. I want to
Thank you.
ask, what's the hardest part of interpreting like the data your team collects in mice in a way that's like relevant to human application? And is there any bottlenecks that you try to keep in mind when you're designing research?
Actually, do you want to answer that?
Oh,
I can answer
um,
part of it. So I
Sure.
personally think
So I would say everything. Everything is a challenge. Uh, so, well, one big thing in neuroscience particularly is that your data will be very noisy. So this will be true regardless of whether you use neuropixels, EEG, fMRI, or any other technique, your data will be noisy. And you will also be somewhat limited in your sample size because obviously, as mentioned before, right, we need to take proper care of the animals. The surgeries are obviously resource and time consuming, so we can't, or it is very difficult to for just your average research project to create something as large of to create a large sample like the one you can see in the IBL's data set. So those are definitely big limitations. Another big limitation, specifically for purposes of translation, which you mentioned, for purposes of human application, is, well, I guess this is no surprise. Mice are not people, right? So, um, for example, one of our researchers at the lab, Jackie, works on in the ASD model uh, within the mouse, right? So what we effectively do is we know that the mice share some genetic features that are associated with autism and autism-like traits, but it is incredibly difficult to infer and to translate from a mouse into a human, right? You might observe a certain behavioral feature that clusters specifically with your genetic model of autism. You might observe that they are perhaps less social or have elevated levels of behaviors that we might associate with autism or ASD-like behaviors. But does that immediately mean that whatever neuroscientific properties govern those behaviors can be immediately translated into the human? That's obviously a huge can of worms. Nonetheless, there are things that we can do to mitigate this. So, for example, we can do EEG and fMRI research on both the mouse and the human, because fMRI and EEG are techniques that in the human can be done non-invasively, and therefore we know a lot about EEG functional connectivity, meaning the way that in broad, the way that parts of the brain, specifically parts of the cortex, communicate with one another during specific cognitive tasks or behaviors. So those are the kind of measures that we can perhaps compare more immediately with 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 the human or across the species, but really the most valuable way is to combine many different avenues of research and many different techniques. So what you ultimately have to do is you have to do controlled and proper animal research. You have to understand the mechanism that underpins the behaviors that you're interested in. You have to analyze patient data, to work with clinicians to understand how certain symptoms manifest in human patients, and effectively just build a complex, nuanced picture of how these features exist in the mouse model or in the rat model or in any other animal model, how they might be studied in silico models, as Petrina mentioned, how they might be evaluated computationally, and ultimately how they manifest behaviorally through the eyes of clinicians. You can investigate that through, human research. Um, yeah, so ultimately what you need is a collective, nuanced balance of uh, effectively as many sources of data as you can get, because at the end of the day, like I mentioned, mice are not humans, right? So the translating between the two is a huge effort that is taking place now. Petrina is part of it as well. We are, after all, in a department of psychiatry, so we work very closely with clinicians to try and move that forward.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Cyrus?
Yeah, so as you know, like recently there's been quite a lot of development in the artificial intelligence and technology sector. So my question is just about how AI really applies to your detection of people with ASD or detection of other forms of like neuroscience related disorders and how this is going to be able to support these people.
There are quite a lot, specifically in our department for ASD. There are machine learning algorithm development that allows people to track the interaction between the patient and their family. And that tracking would allow us to diagnose ASD in a younger age. And that is just through the video analysis from a deaf camera. And there is other front that use AI to detect epileptic attack and predict the circuit that would be most suitable for interventions such as deep brain stimulation. And that is both for epilepsy and for Parkinson. So they can use an electrical stimulation as part of their treatment regime to stop the propagation of activity. And they can use AI to identify the area that is most prone to intervention. There is also another group of people in the department or in the community who works with fMRI signals. So the connectivity study that you have seen. So you have seen the image from the fMRI and the high resolution of fMRI, but the color that generated from the scanning, it comes from analysis of how the different brain region connects to each other. And you can imagine, because it's a high resolution imaging, the connectivity in millisecond on the scale can be quite demanding to analyze. And AI chip in a ways in the pattern recognition, and they can sort out the hyper-connected region and the less connected brain areas. So those are the major forefront of the development. Of course, there is Maciej's work on the simulation as well. So building of in silicon model that we were mentioning.
All right, great.
So yeah, so deep neural network contribute to the generation of the in silicon model quite well and helps integrate of the different modality of data. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I was just saying thank you for, yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Um, I was actually wondering, like, kind of like a last question, like, is there like a piece of advice you'd give like to all, like, because a lot of people here, we're all like aspiring scientists or like researchers, kind of thinking about like future career in like research or science. Any like one piece of advice for us?
Maybe I take the opportunity to thank you all for coming in like an evening to listen to us, and we hope we share with you what is the exciting development in the field. I think keeping your interest is the thing that you can do, reading into the things that you are interested in. Like, I'm happy for you to reach out to me if you want some practical experience. Of course, we'll talk about how to arrange it practically, but I'm happy for you to reach out. If I need to point out one thing that you can do to prepare for your research career, is to learn how to code. Um, because the data that we are facing nowadays has become increasingly complicated, and coding using a computation platform would allow you to access those data much more easily.
And I'll just add the not solely vibe coding.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Lau. Oh, Toming has another question. Right.
Which which language do you think we should learn?
Okay.
I was
So that really depends on what you want to do. So in our lab, we use a couple. For data analysis, it is primarily Python. For data acquisition, it is either C# or C++. We are scientists, not computer scientists, so we like to stay away from C or assembly, because that is a bit of a pain. But yes, so especially if you are interested in experimental work, then C++ and C# might be useful, because a lot of neuroscience data acquisition pipelines are very high frequency, meaning that you want to take a recording, couple thousand times per second, and to do that you need a very fast executable code. So Python might not be able um, to suffice your needs. But when it comes to just data analysis, it's not as harmful if you, for example, let your computer run overnight to analyze your data set. So for those purposes, Python is definitely appropriate. And also it is every once in a while useful to know MATLAB, because a lot of legacy coded science that has been written over the years and that is still around is in MATLAB. So even recently we were collaborating with a more clinical team, and they had a lot of MATLAB code that Petrina asked me to go through. So that was when you kind of have to fire up those memories from college and get the MATLAB stuff running, and finally R as well, for the same reason. A lot of legacy code is written in R, so you might need that in the future. But ultimately, Python is very good for data analysis, and C++ and C# are good for, in our case, have proven very good for data pipeline building.
I think you're
More people start with R and MATLAB, and migrate to Python. The use of C and is C++ or C# is in the establishment stage of the recording pipeline, experimental pipeline, that you would encounter more. So if you need that, you can acquire that skill later on down the stage, I think.
I want to ask what
So,
makes
yeah.
them leave R? Or like what makes them switch from R to Python?
I think most people use R because they are good for statistical analysis, not for the purpose of the type of data analysis that we most commonly encounter in neuroscience. Because in neuroscience, like Maciej mentioned, there is a lot of signal to noise ratio issue. You would need to pre-process the data quite drastically, synchronize them and everything before you get a very nice data set you can do statistical comparison. So in that way, Python is more diverse.
And if you'll allow me, I'll also add here, I guess, for your purposes, it would be important to note, if you are intending to start learning right away, this is something that you can definitely do to reflect on and to learn to build up your scientific career. If you do, and we would definitely be very excited if you do decide to pursue a career in science, then I would say that actually nowadays Python is better to learn. A lot of the skills are translate quite easily. So if you understand Python, learning MATLAB or R will not show too much of a challenge, will not be too much of a challenge for you. And the real true benefit of Python is that it has a huge community. much larger than R and much larger than MATLAB, and this is only growing every year. So Python lets you effectively import packages, which lets you use other people's code that other people have written and published online. So for example, oftentimes when we do like a machine learning model, for us it might be like only 5 lines of code, as opposed to having to write like 50 files, all like hundreds and thousands of lines of code just to run that simple machine learning model. You can just do that much more quickly and much more easily. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend Python.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you very much.